I want to circle back to New York City because I know you've been working in support of Zohran Mamdani, and but let's talk about what's happening on a federal level first in terms of the shutdown. Like, what's your how would you I don't want to say grade, but like what are you seeing this time around in the way that the leadership is dealing with this? Because I mean it's marginally better than the last time when it was easier for them to deny what was actually going on, I think, or what was about to happen, et cetera, et cetera. But what is your sense?
It's Congress is a joke, man. Like I mean, it's just so I'm not even really leaning in or really paying attention to how leadership is dealing with it, quite frankly, because I've been around this block like a million times. And when I say it's a joke, it's just particularly under Republican control, it's even worse than under Democrat control because these Democrats, you know, seek to govern at least a moderate level, right? Like,
right, right.
we the Democrats at the very least are gonna like do what's necessary to ensure the government doesn't shut down. Like we would make sure that doesn't happen. Republicans there, and again, I've only experienced the Trump era. I don't know what it was like under Obama and Bush. They're not serious at all. And their whole thing right now.
Do they know they're not serious? I mean,
I think so.
When you talk to these guys in the hall.
I think so. I think they know, man, because again, I was there for 2 terms, 4 years, and I started to feel and realize like, oh, this is theater. Like this is like wrestling. Like I'm just a character in this effed up play, and I have my role to play as the progressive guy. And that's just what, at least in the House, right? The Senate may be a little different because they get 6 years. In the House is 2 years. You govern maybe for 6, 9 months, and then you're running.
Right.
Your hair's always on fire. You stay in your pocket of talking points and of the theater of what it's supposed to be. And you play your role, and so for the Republicans who have been there for like 2, 3, 5, 10 terms, they know what it is, right? And so it's just and it's heartbreaking because like a person like me and like Corey, who just shout out to Corey, she just launched a re-election campaign. People, working class people, go there to like really do stuff for people, and so like I couldn't fathom like how we can't raise the minimum wage or how. The first iteration of Build Back Better didn't have anything for affordable housing. Like, what are we, like, how does that happen that the bill proposed by a Democratic president at the time didn't have affordable housing and Maxine Waters had to force the White House to put it in? I couldn't fathom as a middle school principal who's every day I got to make sure my kids are okay. I'm going to the most powerful, democracy government in the world, and we can't do basic shit for regular people. I just couldn't fathom it. And so when I see his government shut down, it's like, okay, like, Republicans are on their BS. Democrats seem to be holding the line a bit stronger on certain things, which is a good sign because the last time it was a joke. And so hopefully Democrats will get some wins out of this. And hopefully sooner rather than later, the government will open back up. And I say hopefully because Trump and the administration is so unpredictable.
What is your sense of, from both the outside in, right? I mean, you've worked within the community, like what it feels like to hope to have some type of leadership or material benefit from your representatives, but also from the other side. Like, what is their how much of a difference does it make when, regardless of what the material outcome is of this, but the stances that the Democratic leadership are taking this time versus last time, how much does that filter in? How much does that impact what's happening to people's sort of like sense of what's happening outside? Like, I mean, is there I'm curious of what your sense is of that and what your sense is of their sense of it. Like, because a lot of times it looks like Schumer and Jeffries, they think their audience is basically just everybody in the Morning Joe studio. And there may have been
Especially
a time.
Schumer.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there may have been a time where that was largely true, but I don't think that's true anymore.
Yeah, I think, and it goes back to what I was saying before about being in the House and having to run every 2 years and the hair always being on fire. Every member is hyper focused on their districts, right? Like hyper focused, like what's happening in my district? What happened last election that led to me winning, and let me make sure I stay within that pocket so I can win again. And then Hakeem is looking at that as a leader. Jeffries is looking at that, locally, but also nationally, right? And aligning with frontline districts more so than a vision of what America is supposed to be. So frontline districts are like swing districts, right? And so what is it? What is it? DCCC, I think it is.
Yeah.
So they raise money to support swing districts, and these are important districts, right? Because you have someone like Johanna Hayes in the in the swing district, and she might win by like 0.2%, and we need to win that seat to have the majority. What's always frustrated me is in these districts, you may have 20, 30% of people voting, maybe 35%. And so there's another 60, 70, 80% of people not voting. Like, could we put a plan together to maybe dramatically increase zero prime voters so that we can crush the next election versus just playing this moderate in the middle, not to lose versus play to win kind of politics. And so everyone, again, what Zoran just did with in the New York City primary. So everyone's hyper focused on their district. Hakeem is hyper focused on the country through the lens of DCCC, in my opinion,
Right.
which I don't think is always the right lens. And many of them move, and I'll bring Schumer into this now, move in a way where okay, how do we win the majority here, win the majority there through a narrow lens? And they're not, in my opinion, aware of what the majority of working class people in America care about. And it's just they're just moving with this DCCC, and then underneath that is the DCCC, the DSCC, the DNC, the political class, big money, special interests. So that is the brain trust of Congress, not the people. And what's so exciting about, I'll put myself in there, but me and Corey and AOC and Ayanna and Ilhan and Rashida and Greg Kassar and Summer Lee and Deal. What's exciting about us is we're about the people, man.
Right.
And this is supposed to be the people's house. And again, Citizens United, all that shit, special interests control that place.
But the
hold on, wait, I just want to, the consultant class believes that it's much harder to get that any part of that, whatever it is, 60% that doesn't vote, 40% doesn't vote, whatever that number is, than to convince some 5% in the middle that swings.
Of course, if Ezra Klein is leading that freaking conversation.
Yes.
Of course.
He often is.
I don't want Ezra Klein to come to the Bronx to try to persuade people in the Bronx to vote a certain way. That's the problem.
But let me
We're listening to Ezra Klein and John Podesta. And no disrespect, man, but dog. Anyway, finish. Go ahead.
Well, have you seen examples of, because Mamdani was able to get a primary vote out that was the biggest primary vote in the history of the city. And so obviously mobilizing people who haven't voted in the past. So it's sort of there's evidence that can be done. It just happened. But it's disregarded because, it's young people, whatever the excuse is. Mm-hmm. But have you seen, has there been an example, and we have examples of people who have done that in the context of, that you mentioned, the squad, it's sort of largely from blue districts, so that's sort of discounted. Well, there's some But the idea that you can motivate people in a blue district versus motivating people in a purple district, it doesn't necessarily logically follow that you can't do that. I mean, there are every types of people in every district.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a situation where somebody's perspective turned toward that way? Like, it's one thing to say, okay, I came from, I mean, I remember your race. I'm
about to say, I'm one of the examples, but go ahead.
I interviewed you when you were running in that primary. And you were an educator, and you came in with that attitude. Are there people? Have you seen examples of people who came into Congress with a different attitude and then developed that attitude as a way of like, this is how I can win in the future?
No, I wasn't there long enough to experience that in that way. But one person who I think kind of captures what you're saying, he was a House member that ran for U.S. Senate in New Jersey, Andy Kim.
Right.
So, Jersey can go either way. There's been Republican governors, et cetera. But I think the way he practices politics is a good way to practice politics, meaning he talks to everybody and he's great at communicating and he listens well. And he's really clear on his objective of serving people, but also making this a state for the working class in New Jersey, but a nation for the working class, right? Versus the special interests. And so, no, I wasn't there long enough to see someone like a Jahana Hayes, to use her example, go in, with a very thin victory and then grow the electorate in her district and then crush it the next year. There might be one that I'm not thinking of. I
feel like Pat Ryan is, there's some issues that I don't necessarily, and he's 18th district in upstate, but he's a guy who's who, it was a weird time when he got in because he had to run 2 or 3 times in one cycle. But I don't love all of his issues, but he's pretty solidly in a economic populism, and he was a county supervisor and a pretty good one. I think too.
This is what I'm saying. So that's a very good example, right, of Pat Ryan, who's a bit younger, has been a good leader before then as a county executive, which is a big job and a serious job and a big deal. He did that effectively. Got in, right? And I could definitely totally see him growing the electorate there. He's one of those kind of people. But again, they all fit a characteristic, right? So maybe a little bit younger, and by younger I mean under 50, right? Or under 55, has done something before that shows you have some chops, right? I was a middle school principal. People may not think that's a big deal, but trust me, if you could run a middle school and engage the parents, respectfully.
There's a lot of different constituencies you've got to serve.
And there's a skill set that you need to do that translates to elected office, just like county executive or even a state rep or a local rep. And so, he's one example. But here's what I would offer also. I mean, you see the money that the political class raises, right? This money is rarely or barely invested in the work that we're talking about.
Yes.
It's barely invested in actually growing the electorate.
Well, that was going to be my question too, and it feeds nicely into it, is because micro-targeting a small slice of voters, and Schumer said this in 2016, that what's the quote, right, Matt? For every
a working class person we lose in the Rust Belt, we gain 2 in the suburbs.
Exactly. And so they seem to be hyper-targeting these suburban voters, and consultants get rich if you're micro-targeting a small sliver with TV ads, etc. What Zoran did, what you and the squad did, isn't getting people rich. People power doesn't get people rich because you don't get a percentage off an ad when you're door knocking. And that is I feel like a core of the issue here that we're not talking about. But it's the infrastructure is rotten because the incentive structure is rotten.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's capitalism, right? So it's also greed, and everyone wants to make money, right? And again, Zoran is a is a generational political talent, as AOC was and is, and as many others are. So I don't want to underscore that. But Pat Ryan doesn't jump off the page as someone, super dynamic and charismatic. But I think he can do the same thing. And Zoran also did micro targeting, right? Like all of a sudden we're talking about the Bangladeshi community in New York more than we ever have, the Pakistani community more than we ever have, the African Muslim community more than we ever have, not just Black, Latino, white, East Asian. We're talking about everyone. And the Democratic Party, to me, if it really wants to like fight back and save our democracy, you got to target everyone for real. But if you target everyone, you got to say something about Gaza. Mm-hmm. Now, if you start, you know what I mean? And so this is what I mean by like the special interests, right? And so when you can't, I mean, even before the genocide, I mean, they wouldn't say apartheid. They wouldn't say military occupation.
No, you had Israeli,
they wouldn't even say those words.
You had former Israeli generals and top politicians saying apartheid before a Democratic politician would in this country.
And I heard you on Crystal Kyle and Friends speak about how AIPAC tried to recruit you. Can you just quickly relay that story a little bit, because it was such a fascinating story.
So
we didn't
crazy.
get to it.
Yeah, no, it's so crazy. I mean, as a candidate, and I launched in June 2019. The election was a year away, and it was before COVID. So COVID hit like February, March. So this was before March 2020. And yeah, I'm a candidate. I'm not even polling yet, right? I don't even know what the polling said. But AIPAC reached out to have a meeting, and they didn't reach out directly on their own. Mm-hmm. They were shrewd about it, right? They reached out to a leader in the Black community who happened to work for AIPAC to try to get a meeting with me to tell me about AIPAC's objectives and agenda. This leader was in an organization called 100 Black Men, and he happened to be the executive director of 100 Black Men at the time. And he reached out to me. I said, hey, we can talk about 100 Black Men, but I don't want to talk about AIPAC. Now, thankfully, I was informed about who AIPAC was because I was endorsed by the Justice Democrats, and they were clear on who AIPAC was at the time. And shout out to, Alexandra Rojas and Waleed Shahid, who was there at the time. They educated me, so I didn't meet with AIPAC. But AIPAC does that with any younger, promising person running for office or elected official.
And this is as you were running against Elliot Engel.
Yes, this is 2019. I'm not even polling. Like, I'm not even on the radar yet. And they're reaching out to have a meeting.
So they're covered. They're basically going into the roulette table, and they're going like, we're putting a bet on every. We want to put a bet on every single bet here.
We're putting a bet on everyone, and I'm sure if I was game, they probably would have took me to Israel, during the campaign or maybe shortly after winning. But that's how they get down, and that's how they loop you in, and the sell is also pretty good, right? Because we all want to fight anti-Semitism, and we all want to support a safe place for Jewish people, right? And so, of course we support that. Of course we're down with that. They probably don't even bring up, occupation or Palestinians or Palestine at all. They're just talking about their stuff. And so for me, I was lucky because I came in with JD, so I had that education. But there are elected officials all across the country, and not just congressional.
And they come in and they give a bunch of money, and it's almost like when you start making a little bit of money, you get a mortgage on your house, and then all of a sudden, like, wait a second, you're gonna cut my hours?
Yeah,
I'm screwed on my mortgage, my house.
And everyone hates fundraising.
Yes.
No one likes to fundraise.
Right.
And so when you run for office, for everyone out there, and I think people know this already, but I'll just say it, you got to dial for dollars, man. Like, you're calling complete strangers, Jamaal Bowman calling Sam Seder, hey, I'm Jamaal Bowman, I'm principal running for Congress. Can you toss me a couple bucks? And you're doing that 3-4 hours, sometimes 5 hours a day for like 5, 6, 7 days a week sometimes. And that's what you're doing versus like my whack-ass opponent last term, George Latimer, he didn't have to dial for dollars.
Right.
You know what I mean? AIPAC said, we got you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, you're going to have money in your campaign account, and we're going to establish this IE over here, this C4 over here, and we'll run ads for you. and we'll just run ads for you, and you probably won't even have to spend your campaign account.
Right. All you got to do is just go around,
Just go around
and visit
and-
people.
That's
Right.
right. Go around and visit people, and shake hands and all that, and we got you with the money. So they make it easier, and not just through them, through many special interests, but they're one of the biggest ones, obviously. That's how they, what is it, 70-80%? I guess Congress takes money from AIPAC, some crazy number.
That number is starting to drop.
Which is
slightly.
exciting.
There's
yeah.
a story in the Times today about how, at least nominally speaking, the Democratic Party is moving away from AIPAC, and largely because of the protests and because of the work that activists have done, have made it toxic for people to take AIPAC money.
That's right.
And in your race and Cori Bush's race were perfect examples of Republicans essentially, like it exposed the Republican AIPAC pipeline, and that AIPAC has become not only, I think, for the supportive of the worst impulses of Israel, but also has become a fig leaf for Republican money and conservative values to undercut progressives.
In Democratic primaries.
Yes.
So they're investing in the more conservative Democrat in a particular primary through Republican money. Like, these are Republican donors.
Yeah.
It's like the Bill Ackman in the Zoran Cuomo.
And he wanted to get Torres to jump into the race.
Oh my God, Torres, boy. I mean, yeah, it's crazy, but it's man, I hope we could figure this out, right? Because I mean, you talk about congressional approval right now across the country is 20% for Democrats and Republicans. It's just a joke. And you talk about national security, that's a national security issue. When people stop having faith in your federal or local government, and then this is part of the Project 2025 and Stephen Miller and all of their agenda as well. They want to privatize the federal government.
Totally.
They want to privatize America. So you fire 150,000 federal workers. You close the Department of Education. You steal data from Treasury and all these places, right? You leave the people vulnerable to private takeover, which is what's happening right now as well.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.